The media machine was in overdrive earlier this week when news broke of the arrest in New York City of Sean Diddy Combs, 54 years old, the rap music mogul. He is currently behind bars. He's pled not guilty to racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution. He faces up to life imprisonment if convicted. We've now become familiar with the unfortunate term freak off, which is apparently what they would have another term for sex parties. The allegations are these drug-fueled sex parties with prostitutes went on for days, and that Combs used force and coercion to make people submit to his will. So with us on the phone right now is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, who's the president and founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Where are we going with all of this?
Bill, we're going to trial because there's really no deal that the U.S. Attorney's Office can offer that Combs is going to accept. We're talking about 10 and 15-year mandatory minimum sentences. Obviously, the RICO charge goes up to life, and lots of victims. We're talking about a defendant with really unlimited means, worth reportedly $1 billion, and he's beaten charges before, obviously state charges, but the J-Lo nightclub shooting case, he got a not guilty. So dig in your heels. We're going to go all the way on this one.
Why is this a federal case? I know technically he's accused of helping transport people across state lines, but why is this a federal case and not a state case in New York?
Well, it could be a state case in New York, Miami, or Los Angeles, where we are. But obviously, when you're talking about multiple victims over a span of years, that's really when the feds get involved, right? We've seen it with, R. Kelly, Epstein, not the first time, the second time. So when you really have one of these criminal enterprises, and there are people that, question, is this really a RICO case? It's not the gang, it's not the cartel,
right.
It's not the mob, but lots of victims over a significant period of time.
Well, let me interrupt you. When you say victims, yeah. who are the victims, quote unquote? Let's say the guy has unusual sexual tastes and has wild parties. Who are the quote unquote victims? Again, just sort of taking the other side.
Yeah, of course. Look, consenting sexual activity between adults is not illegal. But we've all seen the 2016 video of Combs beating Cassie Ventura,
which is not part of this case.
Intercontinental trip. Yeah. Well, it's a RICO predicate act. It is actually part of this case.
Okay.
It's not charged, but it's part of the RICO, the first thing, because even though RICO is racketeering, you need two or more RICO acts. So the assault, the kidnapping, the arson, that's all part of count one. But what you're talking about, Phil, is sex trafficking. So if there is sexual activity, but it's caused by force, fraud, or coercion, that's a crime, both state and federal. Now, of course, Diddy's going to argue that this was all consensual.
Right.
That's going to be the key issue in the case. And the third count is the prostitution. The prostitution across state lines, money is exchanged, that commercial component, that's also federal as well. Of course, that's the least serious of the three counts.
So as a former federal prosecutor, I mean, what was going on behind the scenes before this high-profile indictment and arrest earlier this week?
Well, this has been 10 months in the making. We talked about Cassie. She filed that bombshell civil complaint in November of last year. And, of course, Combs settled it the very next day. But you're talking about someone that was his girlfriend of more than a decade, and she just revealed everything. And once that lawsuit was filed, it was all public. And then you had 8 or 9 other folks that filed similar claims. Now, his homes in Miami and Los Angeles were raided in March. And at that time, the feds, they were looking for video evidence, because if you believe Cassie, Combs videotaped a lot of these sex acts. So there's going to be a treasure trove of video evidence. We know there's a lot of witnesses, a lot of folks who have filed civil lawsuits. So that's what this case is going to be based on, the video and the witnesses that are going to testify at trial.
So if you were defending Combs, your strategy at this point would be what?
My strategy is to say, like you said, Phil, that this might have been freaky. People are talking about 1,000 bottles of baby oil, but weird, deviant, strange sexual activity, that is not unlawful. Combs is going to have to argue that this was consensual. Now, the prosecution is going to say that they were drugged, they couldn't leave, there were guns involved, there's these threats, there's force. So that is going to be the key issue in this case. Was this all consensual? Was it forced? That's the difference between sexual assault and consenting legal sexual activity.
So it seems at this point, Combs has taken the fall for all of this, but I would assume there may be other arrests. I mean, he didn't do this all by himself.
I would think there would be other arrests. And that's what the surprising part of the indictment was. I said, look, they've been waiting 6 months. Are there other celebrities? We know that Diddy's parties were notorious here in Hollywood. A lot of rich and famous people went there. I'm not comparing it to Jeff Epstein, but there's a lot of rumors out there. So, the fact that there's only one individual charge, and the U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, during his press conference on Tuesday, said the investigation's ongoing. So if I was someone who attended one of Diddy's parties and I saw what happened, I would be lawyering up right now or be really concerned because at best, I'm a witness that could be subpoenaed at trial. At worst, I could be a new defendant in the conspiracy.
So how much of the allegations in civil lawsuits are admissible in a case like this? Or is this something that will have to be decided by a judge at the time?
So interestingly, now that the criminal case has been filed, all the civil cases will be put on hold because Combs would have to sit for a deposition, and there's no Fifth Amendment privilege against not testifying in a civil case. But
Right.
of course, when there's a pending criminal investigation, that absolutely applies. So all the civil cases are going to be put on hold. So now the criminal case is going to take priority. Diddy, of course, can testify, can choose not to. So the allegations are going to be key because the witnesses are going to have to testify at trial to prove the criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt. But nothing's going to happen civilly for quite some time.
Right, but I'm saying if those witnesses testify in the criminal case, it's one thing, but are the mere allegations that are reported in these multiple lawsuits, are those necessarily admissible?
No, that's not evidence. And even if someone testifies before the grand jury, not admissible, you have to testify in open court, face your accuser, which is Combs, be subject to cross-examination. Otherwise, none of the allegations or the victim's statements so far, it's all hearsay. It doesn't come in unless they come to trial.
Do you agree with the decision to hold him without bail?
I do. If you look at bail, it's really appropriate if someone's not at risk of flight or not a danger to the community. And I'm not saying Diddy's a flight risk. He could have taken off. He surrendered his passport.
Right.
But it's really the danger to the community. Some of these charges, and again, the RICO predicate acts, the sex trafficking, the drug trafficking, those are presumption cases, which means under federal law, there's a presumption of pretrial detention. And if you look at what the judge ruled on, not the first judge, the magistrate judge, but the second judge, he was really concerned, Judge Carter, that Combs was contacting witnesses.
Yeah, he was concerned about witness intimidation.
Yeah, witness intimidation, trying to pay him off. Richard contacted her more than 50 times over a 4-day period. And I know Diddy put up a very aggressive $50 million bond. He's going to surrender his phone, no internet, cameras in the home, call logs.
Right.
But the question is this: would Diddy have been treated differently than any other criminal defendant if the judge granted this extraordinary bond? And I think the answer would be yes. Anyone else that was charged with these crimes, we'd be in custody pending trial, and Diddy's going to face the same fate.
Well, it's very lurid. It's very controversial. It's, headline generating. So in our society in 2024, this is going to get almost constant attention as it moves through the courts. I mean, he's being held in federal detention without bail, and word today that he's on suicide watch, which has also been reported as, quote, routine. So, Neama Rahmani, thanks for your insight on this. I always appreciate talking with you, and maybe we'll check back with you as this winds its way through the court system over the next few months or maybe even years. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, this case got it all, sex, drugs, celebrities, so we're going to be covering it for quite some time.
That's why God invented TMZ. All right, Neama Rahmani, thanks so much.